It's Ram season, which means it's time to serve with Ram 1500, Ram 3500, and Ram TRX. Ram, built to serve. And now, well-qualified lessees get a low-mileage lease on the 2023 Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab 4x4 for $489 a month for 36 months with $3,465 due at signing. Tax, title, license extra, no security deposit required. Call 1-877-RAM-5722 for details. Requires dealer contribution, a lease through Chrysler Capital. Extra charge for miles over 30,000. Residency restrictions apply. Take delivery by 5/31/23.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We're here to continue our That One Play series about Ravens history, going over some just wonderful memories. And this has been a pleasure to do this series. Joining me for one of the truly iconic plays in Ravens history, the 4th and 5 stop of the 49ers in Super Bowl XLVII that effectively won the game. Here to talk about with me is Brandon Croxton. Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
You're a veteran on this show, my friend. You've great performances in your first two. The Lamar spin move we talked about, including some defensive changes in 2019. That was a lot of fun. Is another one out there, and I forget what that one actually was about. Now that
that was the Ed Reed black punt for a touchdown back in 2003. Yep.
Against Seattle?
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. So good range of Ravens history from a longtime PSL holder that you get from Brandon, and a defensive lineman both in high school at Gilman locally and in college at Howard. So really appreciate having your expertise and your thoughts on this game. Yeah. So take us up to the moment kind of in Super Bowl XLVII.
Yeah, well, I can certainly say this game was a tale of two moments. The first half, right before the lights went out, it was all Ravens. They were absolutely dominating the game, led 28-6. Then the lights went out, and it was all 49ers after that. They came back with a fury. They were moving the ball on the defense the entire half, and when they weren't converting in the first half, they were converting red zone trips to touchdowns, and was just had us totally on the ropes the entire half. And I'll tell you, this offense, the 49ers offense, looks real familiar from what we've seen the last 4 years. Greg Roman was the OC back then, and you could see a lot of the similarities between our offense and what theirs was, back in the Super Bowl. So, yeah. So right before the drive started, Flacco had an absolutely crucial field goal drive that made the score from the Ravens were leading 31-29 at the time, and they were able to get a field goal, and that turns out to be absolutely huge. So they kicked the ball back off to the 49ers, leading 34-29.
That drive for the field goal by Flacco included that very memorable 3rd and 1 play, which I think is a lot of times forgotten, especially by younger fans who didn't see the game live. They may go through it, but Phil Simms was right on it. He said, they're checking out of a run here on 3rd and 1. He threw the ball up, let Anquan Bolden go up and get it on the right side. Culliver was on him, I think. That sound right?
Yes, yeah. Culliver. Yep.
And he out-muscled Culliver for the football, brought it down, and Anquan was playing like a superhero in that postseason in terms of his ability to take the ball away from anyone.
Yes, I don't think Anquan got enough love for how great he was that whole Super Bowl run, because he really stepped up into a true number one receiver those 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's 34-29, and the 49ers then get the football.
Yep. And they start driving down the field, and Frank Gore hits a 33-yard run, takes it down to the Ravens 7-yard line with about 2:30 left in the game. And so 1st and goal, was a draw play to LaMichael James for about 2 yards, and it takes it down to the 5. And second and goal from the 5. This was, I think it sums up, one of the errors for the Niners this entire that entire game. The play clock was running down, and they Kaepernick has a quarterback draw called, and but the play clock is running down, so Harbaugh calls a timeout right before they snap it. And judging by the way looked like it was blocked up, Kaepernick would have walked into the end zone without getting touched. But fortunately, the timeout was called, and they called a different play. So yeah.
That was the 3rd and 5 play where they actually threw the incomplete, where Jimmy Smith practically decapitates Crabtree near the right pylon.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, my mistake. Yeah.
No, it's okay. So the second and 5 play was Corey Graham getting a PD, also on the right side, and I think Jimmy Smith might have been close on that play as well to do that. But anyway, this brings up the big 4th and 5 play.
Yep. 4th and 5, and the Ravens are in man coverage, and 49ers are in 11 personnel. The Ravens send a blitz. They bring 6, and Donnell Ellerbe is able to break free up the middle, and Frank Gore is late to block him, and that allows Ellerbe to get pressure right on Kaepernick.
Yeah, so pressure was on Kaepernick. The ball's out quickly. The most important part of that play, because the ball is overthrown, whatever, holding signals that Jim Harbaugh wants to make on the sideline, that ball was not going to be caught. Ed Reed says he would have intercepted it if it had been on target, but in any case, it was played up very well by the Ravens veterans. The part I want to focus on for just a second is the left side of that offensive line in there, the right side from the defense's perspective, which I know you're probably more used to. But Ray Lewis crossed. He was at the line of scrimmage, part of a cover 0 blitz they were showing, which is not as risky, obviously, down on the goal line like that. Crosses the face of the left guard Iapati on the play. Iapati, Lewis would have been picked up by the center. Iapati, though, turned to block Lewis, and that allowed Ellerbe to blitz in through a gap between Suggs, who had the left tackle Staley fanned out, and where Lewis had taken the attention of Iapati away. But Ray Lewis, in his final defensive play of his career, made an absolutely enormous contribution to winning the Super Bowl, which is still, to me, those 3 plays, Ray had a significant contribution to each of those 3 plays. On a previous play, and I forget which one of the 2 it was, because they're both incomplete passes, they had run what effectively is a clear out play to get the last guy through, which was Frank Gore, in a position to make a catch after the receivers had taken the coverage away. Ray Lewis was right on Gore, forced that ball to be thrown to the outside instead. And that was a huge play that kind of went unnoticed by a lot of things. I consider those 3 plays by Ray Lewis to be one of the greatest finishes for any athlete in the history of sports. And that includes Ted Williams homering in his last at bat and things like that. There aren't really other examples of the truly last play or last plays being so impactful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, because really this whole season you could really see this was the end of the line for Ray. Even the defense as a whole was entering a new era. This was probably one of the 3 or 4 worst defenses, certainly in the 2000s of Ray's career. This was probably one of the worst. And, they lost Ladarius Webb earlier in the season. Suggs, who was Defensive Player of the Year the season before, had the Achilles, and he wasn't back to 100% of himself. And this was, the last stand for our general, and he absolutely came through big time, on his last drive.
Yeah, he did. And honestly, you can it's a tale of 2 halves in terms of the 49ers and Ravens dominating, but honestly, the 49ers just abused Ray Lewis in this game for most of it in terms of coverage. Crabtree, and there's a lot of this on the Super Bowl film itself, is really mouthing off to Ray about, all day, I can, you can't cover me kind of thing, old man. And he was basically correct. And even though Ray had a ton of tackles in the postseason, a lot of that was coverage based, and it was really Ray Lewis was not playing at a very high level, but he brought it out. He put on the cape for those last 3 plays and made enormous contributory efforts to each of those 3.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It was all day. They were running crossers with Vernon Davis, their other tight end, and Crabtree were going across the middle, and you could see Ray was just a step slow. He could read, like his brain was working just fine. He read the play. He knew it was coming. His feet just couldn't get him to the position to make a play on it, though. But yes, like you said, he in his last stand, he absolutely came through.
So let's talk about the back end of this play as well, because there's a couple things happening. There's kind of the Ed Reed component to it, and also the Jimmy Smith component, of course, in terms of that one-on-one matchup.
Yeah, sure. So, frankly, like I want to get your expert opinion on this too, because I've watched this play many times, and Kaepernick absolutely throws a fade pattern towards the back corner of the end zone. But Crabtree, he's runs off the line like he's trying to run a fade pattern, but then he stops at the 1, and then he stops like he's going to try to post up Jimmy, in coverage, and then when he sees that the ball is going over his head, he grabs Jimmy, tries to kind of pull him off and try to get to the ball, and of course the ball falls incomplete. But I would love, I'm sure you've watched it many times too. I would love for you to explain exactly what Crabtree was doing there.
Yeah, I couldn't figure it out either. It may have been some sort of a stop and go thing. You have a little more time when you're at the goal line, and your total route is only about 15 yards. That you're gonna run from your initial spot. You have a little time to try that kind of fakery. So it may have been some sort of stop and go move. And there's an old tight end, and you may remember him from it's really kind of before your time. I think Jackie Smith. He's known probably for dropping a pass in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's before my time, but I know of him.
You know him. Okay, so great tight end for the Cardinals, primarily during his career. But he had a set tactic where he would kind of find a way to disappear by kind of throwing a block at the line of scrimmage and feigning a stumble, and then he would break right out of that and go to a spot, and Jim Hart or any number of the quarterbacks that he used to work with back in that day would hit him for a touchdown pass. But anyway, you have time to make that kind of a stop and go route when your total route length is not particularly long, particularly if you're trying to protect that space. But I think Ed Reed was really on the play as well. And to hear Ed talk about it is, if that ball would have been on target, I would have picked it off. I was moving right over there, and I'm not sure that quite matches up with what I'm seeing, but Ed did seem to understand what was going on with the play. So if the ball had hung up in the air like a normal fade pass a little longer, maybe he'd have been able to make a play on it. In terms of the contact between the receivers, I want to get your opinion on that, about what you thought, and as a defensive player, looking at that.
Yeah, sure. I am always of the belief that they need to let them play, unless it's a clear and obvious penalty. You don't want the refs determining the outcome of a Super Bowl, and unless Jimmy literally pulls Crabtree down, or Crabtree throws Jimmy down, you want them to fight it out and determine who wins that game. And yeah, like I thought it was a great no call, because again, I really believe it was probably a miscommunication between Crabtree and Kaepernick on who, what route was being run, and a holding call or a pass interference call would have just been bailing them out on their mistake, not really the Ravens.
It's definitely, in that particular situation, would have been a massively disproportionate penalty. And it's, obviously that's the nature of high leverage plays like this. Something else we talked about in our production meeting is just how this play doesn't really seem to get the love as the same sort of a high leverage play in Ravens history. With the other big three, I'll call it the Mile High Miracle, the Ray Lewis interception, which honestly was not that high leverage a play, where he picks Eddie George's pocket, and the block and return, which was an enormous leverage play from that same game, the one that changed basically the score from a 3-point deficit to a 7-point lead at a time when there were no points to be had.
Sure. Yeah. I think the only way I can explain it is, all of those plays were either touchdowns or turnovers, and this was essentially just an incomplete pass. But obviously, this was the play for the Ravens in which, I think every Raven fan breathed a huge sigh of relief after this play because, we were watching perhaps the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, and then it gets stopped right in the last second. In order for us to get our second Super Bowl. So I know after this game, I was, that first Ravens, it was kind of a coronation. This was we made it, we won, we're champions. It's so maybe it's just that not as iconic because of that, but yeah, I can't explain it.
I like the Flacco comment about it after the game. It says, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty, but it was us kind of thing. And I may be paraphrasing slightly there, but that 2012 team, it was resourceful and they certainly got it together at the right time, but that team was not as good as the first 4 Harbaugh teams. And even that 2009 team that was 9-7, to my way, was the best of the 5 teams. And they did show it in New England in the playoffs, but they couldn't put it together in Indianapolis.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. This was not nearly as good of a team as any of the previous Harbaugh and Flacco teams, of the era. But football is funny like that. This is why, when so many fans talk about going all in for, 1, maybe 2 season, you can go all in and you'll win. Maybe you win, or, imagine what the Rams look like, if they hadn't won the Super Bowl last year. They're in a world of hurt now, and I want my team in the playoffs every year, and it may be a lottery ticket to actually win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's an incredibly low percentage chance for any team, whether you're the best team or the 14th best team in the playoffs. It's an incredibly low chance of you winning, but I want to be one of those 14 every year, as opposed to one of those 14 one year and then have 2 years where you're not even in.
Yeah. Brandon, you have the other half of the amulet in terms of your beliefs on this. And I actually think that some of it is based on the fact that we're season ticket holders and the fact that I don't want to I don't want to be put in a position where I have to go to games because I have to go to the game no matter what. And it doesn't mean anything. It's just that would infuriate me. And it also infuriates me teams if a team just enters a rebuilding phase or wants to play the roller coaster parody. They're doing it with my ticket value. Stop it. Put a team on the field that can win every year and stop going outrageously, to try and win any particular year. There's a lot of variation in viewpoint within the Baltimore community, but basically the Twitter community really is a bunch of all-in people. And some of them are season ticket holders, some of them not. So I'm not going to judge people on that basis. But I will say that the Ravens have made the playoffs 10 out of the last 15 years. That's exactly what I want. I'll give me that again with one Super Bowl. I'm happy.
Yeah, I would say everybody that thinks that wants the teams to go all in, like we had 2015. Go to every 2015 home game and see how much fun it is in November and December when you're watching a 3-10 team at that point.
Yeah. or some of the, the late bowler era and whatnot, the 2005, 2007 seasons are just miserable. And those can happen anyway with injuries. So it's not like you're protected from them, but you don't want to be put in a position where you gambled, you lost, and now you really have nothing to look forward to. So
going into a season knowing you're not going to be good is by far the worst.
Yeah. Brandon, absolutely love talking football with you. This is a great discussion, and we ran a little over, but that's cool in this particular case. Tell folks where they can reach out to you, maybe talk football with you if they get the chance.
Yeah, I'm not online talking football much, but I at pretty much every game, so come see me at section 106.
All right. The folks out there, if you'd like to be on a show and do that one play, just give me a DM on Twitter. They're always open. I'll get back to you very quickly, and we'll be recording in a matter of days, I promise you. This has been such a fun series to do. Brandon, you're one of the people who's made it really exceptional with your great knowledge of the game and research into these particular ones. But thanks very much for coming on again.
All right, great. Thank you. It's been fun every time, so love to come back.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.
And now, a special motorcycle weather report from Progressive.
Well, today you can expect lots of cloud cover with 0% chance of raining on your parade because you'll be riding your motorcycle vroom vroom. That rumbling low-pressure system beneath you should give way to a relaxing commute and the sudden urge to take the scenic route everywhere you go because, dagnabbit, you're having fun out there. That's your forecast. Back to you.
This has been a special motorcycle weather report from Progressive, where every day's a beautiful day to ride with coverage from America's #1 motorcycle insurer. Get a quote today and see what you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.